I miss you, Jesse. Why did you even have to die? Is that really just a bit of nothingness? I don't want to die!
Austin's heart suddenly begins to race and he collapses to the ground.
What is happening? Where am I?
He then realizes he is standing in an overwhelmingly bright light. A peaceful realm unfolds around him, dissolving every fear instantly.
Wait, is that you, Jesse?
Hey, Austin, don't worry. Death isn't something to fear about. It's just a transformation into another state. What do you think that was? Do you think it is something bad? That's just what the world makes you think. This is what death is. Maybe it introduces us into a new utopian world instead.
Suddenly, Austin blacked out.
What was that? Dream? Oh, I guess nobody knows what lies beyond the dark. If so, we should just focus on living in the moment.
Is death always bad? Our group argues it's not. No one likes being confronted with the idea of their own mortality, but why is that? There's so many questions that can be raised about. This is what death is like. It's sudden, it creeps up on you when you least expect it. One day, you're a living, breathing human being, and the next day, you're just gone. You're going to die. That's reality, let's just face it. You won't know when your life will be cut short. And when confronted with this, you might be thinking, oh, but I don't want to die, death is so bad. But our group believes that there's an inherent problem with claiming that death is always bad. So let's first define death by saying that it's the irreversible cessation of all functions. It's the stoppage of life. But there's a distinction here to be made between death in itself and the concept of death. Death in itself, we believe, is neutral because we don't actually know what happens when people die. We know people die, but there's no way of us to know what death actually is. And we'll tackle this in our first argument. The concept of death, however, deals with the fact that your life comes to an end. After this, nothing matters. The concept of death, we believe, is positive because the fact that your life is limited is a good thing. Why? Because it enables you to treasure what's happening right now. Let's look at this photograph, for example. Why do we cherish this photograph so much? It's because we'll never have another tutorial again, and we cherish this time, this limited time that we share with each other. And we'll tackle this in our second argument to explain why death is not always bad. So let's first begin our argument with Taoism. Taoism emphasizes living in harmony with what is known as Tao, which is the way, the natural order of the universe.
Death is our motivator. Death means the end of our lives. It is an undeniable fact that death always makes us be afraid because we will lose everything when we are dying. However, at the same time, death constantly reminds us our time is limited. We should make a good use of our short time to make our limited life unique and meaningful. For example, people like to travel to different countries in this world because they want to learn different culture and enjoy different views. Why so? Because they know there will be no chance to do so after they die. If people all have infinity time and life, and they will always have a one thought, oh, I have so much time, and I'm going to live everything to tomorrow. However, on the other day, this thought will still exist, and they will still live everything to their tomorrow again, and this tomorrow will never go to end, and people will be unable to make any progress. I think the meaningless and infinity life is more scarier than the death.
One of the counter-argument can be this: why motivation even matters. Death is our greatest fear, as it causes us to lose everything. Many bad events in the world are accompanied by death. If death could be eliminated, we could gladly give up progress to live without fear. Living without the ultimate fear of death is true freedom and a good thing for mankind. Therefore, motivation doesn't matter at all in this situation. Well, our response is that eliminating death doesn't mean evil events disappear. Pain remains, and forces of evil can still cause endless suffering. And actually, pain is used to avoid the danger of death. So without death, pain loses its meaning. Suffering without death is like eternal, meaningless torture. Moreover, there is psychological pain as well. Motivation is crucial for self-realization and goals. Without motivation, life becomes purposeless. Living forever with no reason to live is an unhappy, chaotic life. It's like choosing quantity while giving up quality altogether. Therefore, it's not freedom, but a life enslaved by meaningless suffering.
Skeptics may counter that death will not be a motivator should a person perceive the suffering as endless. Imagine a person in great pain and has lost all other senses. They will not see death as motivation to enjoy life, but may even perceive death as an end to their suffering. While this situation is plausible when the person is truly suffering endlessly while living, such despair is unrealistic in the real world. Even in the crumbling building on fire where we are about to suffocate, we are still motivated to find a glimmer of escape. Even when plagued with terminal cancer, we are still motivated to hang on to savor the last moments with our loved ones. Even when tortured by enemy for months, we dream of when our allies come to our rescue. Death motivates us to strive for life, even in the deepest abyss.
From the perspective of Taoism, death is just part of the cycle of existence, which is a transition of substances. So, my first argument is that death is something neutral instead of something bad. Now, let's consider an example. Water. Water itself is something neutral, and it's neither something inherently good or bad, but rather a necessary part of the continuous cycle of life. When we're looking at water itself, it's just something appearing on the earth and forming a harmonious dance where one gives rise to the other. For Taoism, it teaches us to embrace the impermanence of existence, recognizing that everything is in a constant state of change, and death is just a transition in our life, just as the seasons transition. Life transitions into death. Is death an end? No. It's just a continuation of life, but in a different form. Even if you don't agree with this Taoist point of view that death is actually something neutral, you cannot deny that we shouldn't feel bad about death, since we actually know nothing about death. Throughout our lives, we have been indoctrinated with the idea that death is something to be feared. Something is inherently negative. But does anyone really know what happens after death? No. In summary, we can say that death in itself should be considered as neutral.
One of the counter-arguments is that death deprives your future opportunity. You may lose the chance to complete your work or fulfill your ideas after you die. And our response is that we do not deny the fact that losing your life will deprive your future opportunity. However, depriving your future opportunity is not actually a bad thing. There are some people who do not want future opportunity anymore because they have already fulfilled their goals. This can be applied to the case for some elderly people. They have already done everything they want to do in their life and they are satisfied. They will not need opportunity anymore because while they are extending their life, they also suffer from the future pain due to the nature of life. Therefore, losing future opportunity is not actually a bad thing.
So one counter argument for death always being bad as a whole comes from the idea that life is intrinsically valuable. So statement 1 is all life is intrinsically valuable, and statement 2 is it is better for the world if we have more value. Hence it follows that death should always be bad, because when you lose a life, you lose the value that that life was contributing by virtue of its very existence. So in very reductionistic terms, death is always bad because the world losing value is bad. Our response to this is rather simple. It's asking what makes life valuable. A life has valuable if it has impact on something else. But why do we create impact at all? Well, because of death. Because there is a limit on the amount of time we have to create impact. And creating impact in the world is one of the aspects that makes our life meaningful. So, what are we trying to say? We want to conclude by saying that death in itself is always neutral, well, because we do not know what it is, and death as a concept can be good because it is one of the aspects that makes our life meaningful. We want to end our presentation with a little bit of a song, because in our lecture on death, Dr. Jin started by showing us a song. So we want to show you a slightly different song that may have a different perspective of death.
One day you'll sleep and you'll never wake again. Heaven, hell, nirvana, nothing, no one knows how it ends. Rest in peace or pieces, I don't even know why. One day you're going to die,
And there's probably nothing after.
one day you're going to die. No need to think about it, one day you're going to die.
Cancer, murder, gotta try your best to live as you like. One day you're going to die.